So I'm going to continue to study Godot from the points I left yesterday. I left a comment on the last stream because I realized that uh, I don't know how I didn't think about this, but uh, because I was using the export template from the other version, because I downloaded from the website and they just changed the name of the file. That was the reason why the uh, executable with the 4.3 version wasn't working. So it's just a mismatch between the editor version that I was using to export and the final executable. But I still don't understand why this happens. So, but I'm not really sure if I'm gonna try to figure that out. So I'm more interested on trying to figure out the exports config, exports presets config file, and then how the project.godot file works. So that's what I'm gonna do today. And I'm probably not gonna talk much. I'm just gonna spend a bunch of time studying this, and I'm gonna do the Anki training first. So probably half an hour of this. Yeah. Then I'm going to spend a bunch of time looking into the source code and then following the steps here. So thankfully I didn't do uh, a GitHub issue or something like that, open something. And I'm gonna be listening to this guy here, shout out to him. His music is very good to study and program with. I really enjoy it. So yeah, YouTube cracker, however you say that, YT cracker. We'll have an hour, I think, of this. Then probably 2 hours, and then take a break in the middle. Then continue. I'm doing bash now. I have to put the. I haven't been updating the spreadsheet too much, so I have to put there the new thing. I did a bunch of. I think I did 3,000 reps on the PowerShell, and then I felt like it was getting repetitive with all of the things, so I decided to move on to that. But probably what I'm going to do is just cycle through them a couple of times because, and I think it doesn't matter how much times you do it, you still are going to forget a lot of this stuff, but it's just like, it makes it easier to, at least you don't start from scratch if you need something, so it makes it a lot more available in your mind. And I'm trying to do just a couple of them to keep the habit, but I forgot in a couple of days to do it. So I think half an hour is already too much. Probably 10 minutes is all you need, or even less, every day. You can memorize a lot of these commands. I think this is strong user file. Obviously, the thing here is just we're gonna replace with the actual user, and then with the file you want to. And on this spreadsheet, because I got all of these, if you get on, click on get shared, it's just gonna open the Anki thing, and then you can search here. So all that I did was like put a bunch of topics on a file and then download by topic. Some people that have more experience with Anki, they tell you to not build different profiles, but I decided to build. And I'm not really even sure if I'm going to be able to do on the other one, but I would like to also do the anatomy one. And it's very common for people that are on medical school to do this. And there are things you can do with image. There's image occlusion extension that you can do, where you print the image and then you put like different parts of the image to memorize, like the labels. So I think that this is the worst part about it. Like, is the parts that takes the most effort is building the cars, but actually training is very easy. And you just press 1, 2, 3, or 4 to put the label here. If you think that is very hard, you press 1 and then it just goes again. If you think it's easy, then I never do the easy because And from videos I've seen, they recommend you to just do the goods if you think it's very easy, because if you put on the easy, then the card is probably never gonna show up again. So whenever I usually use the 1 and the 3. So when I haven't memorized, I keep using the 1, and then once it gets very easy, I put the 3, and then it rotates the card for you. They use an algorithm that I'm not really sure about it, but yeah, it's an algorithm for space repetition, I think. I think it's which. And here, this one was kind of confusing to me, but the command you replace with an executable. So, for example, if you have the Python executable, this would be Python, I think. So it just finds where you have the executable on your computer, and then it lists them, I think. Relevant locations. It's just to list files. This one's kind of confusing as well, but the command is actually just star xf. Tar slash xf, and then the file name with the tar extension. And the other one, this other stuff here is just a description. So X stands for extract, and then F for file name. This one's a little bit different than the other one. I'm trying to press 3 more frequently, so it shows new cards more often. Because usually I tend to stay on the same cards too long, so this is there's one similar, which is the search command history, and search command history is Control plus R. But I think this is history, yeah. It's another confusing one, but the numbers here determine the order or what kind of input it is. I think the 1 is probably standard out. I'm not really sure though. I have to probably maybe it's better to ask ChatGPT. Oh no, this is a different one. So I think this one is like this, and then you pipe. Piping is just using this symbol here. So you're sending the standard error. So the standard error is the true. When you write the true and this character here, this is just a redirection character. So it sends the commands of the standard errors to the sender out. And probably the symbol here is like similar to C++. This is an address, but I'm not 100% sure. And this just pipes the other command. So you just do this. So it's sending the error to the standard output and then sending to the other command, I think. Also, not supposed to use the... but this is just for... Oh, I was supposed to use the thing. There's another example that they don't use, but it's just the description. It's just to say you're gonna replace the command with something else. This one is very difficult. I don't remember really well. I think it's command. Then you do T, file, something like that. And then there's something here that I don't remember. Some of these are very hard to do in the beginning, true. But then and it feels kind of impossible to memorize, but I try to memorize just one part, and then once I get that down, it becomes easier to get the rest. Obviously, if you understand the logic, it's easier as well of how the commands are built. To file and print to the console. So sending the standard error here, and then piping to the D. These commands. So this is the one that's is like this. Then it's commands true file commands. I don't know where the last one stands for. It's not supposed to put the thing. So I assume that one is standard output, the two is standard error, and the other one I'm not really sure what it's supposed to be. I guess I can ask ChatGPT. So all that it does is redirects both. But I'm not really sure why it's necessary to have the other ones. If that's the case. I think this is Shimon's X and then file. I wrote the wrong way, but it's a plus, not thing. Star CF. Oh. So the pattern I think on these ones is the CH in the beginning, and then whatever comes next is what you want to do. This CH is probably character, but I'm not really sure if it makes sense to be character. I'm not really sure. Maybe this is the T one. Commands the file. I think it was command something. I don't remember. And commands. I say pipes again with the file. I think this one has been the hardest to figure out. It's commands. Okay. I'm not really sure if this is correct as well. It's probably wrong here. Or it needs to have the closing parentheses in the end. I'm confusing which ones require to put the symbol there to indicate. Stream mods. So mods probably stands for modifier, I think. This one I think it doesn't require. There's the T file. It's something like this. Oh, almost. I'm gonna change this thing because I think it's wrong. So it's probably like this. Yeah, so probably gonna have to change the prompt there. So I think what it means to do with the explanation there. So he wants you to write two different commands, but it's kind of confusing. So the thing in parentheses is supposed to be one command, and the thing outside is supposed to be another command. It's to study programming using FD or Anki. Yes, but only it should be a supplemental thing, I think. At least for my opinion, can only speak for my own, so in the way that I think. But for my opinion, yes. So you should view it as a funnel. So the method I use to learn is like superficial first, and so very fast superficial. You watch a bunch of videos, and obviously you're not gonna capture everything. You're just trying to get a bunch of different perspectives on the same thing. Then once you understand the general points of view, you're always trying to reduce everything to fundamental principles. Then once you do that, it creates this funnel where you start to go more in depth because now you have a good idea of the general picture, so you can understand what's more likely to be correct. Then you dive deeper based on what you think is more likely to be correct. And then once you get to the point, the deeper you go, you have to go back because you're creating this feedback loop system where you're downloading data into your subconscious mind. So like the way your body works is the same way that your computer works, where your body is the hardware and your subconscious. And the learning process is getting information from the environment, passing through your RAM, and then putting on, which is your attention span and your conscious focus, and then putting that in your unconscious mind. And it can be very dangerous because you always have to have on the line of open-mindedness, because if you're too open-minded, then people can uh, put Trojan horses in your subconscious, and that's where when faith becomes a problem because it can be used on the wrong way. So it's like people can install ideas in you that can make you kill yourself, let's say, that do things that are not beneficial to you, but you think they are because you're being hacked. And that's what happens with food as well. That people, when you eat food, it changes your gut microbiome, which is going to change your mind because it's all connected. So, and then you start having ideas that are going to justify to yourself why you should keep doing that. So, and there's always this line. So, yeah, it's a difficult line to navigate because at the same time you don't want to be too rigid because then you don't learn anything and you don't grow. So the best way is the middle way, probably. And I view this as it's very common that people in other fields people do this a lot. I think it's mostly medical field where you have to memorize a bunch of stuff, but I think that this is perfect for bash commands and stuff like that because usually isn't a lot of depth and it's more about knowing what kind of command to use. So I have to think about how to. I'm probably just gonna, because I don't want to spend much time. I'm just gonna try to reduce this into one command, send command output the file and print to the console. Oh, use it with natural languages, but I didn't thought it was a good idea to use it with programming. Requires practice for concepts to stick. Yeah, that's what I mean with the funnel. So like it shouldn't be it can be the first way actually, but you have to be careful obviously. So if Anki is the first thing that you're gonna do to learn something new, you should just get the cards. So you should do it differently. So like for example, every command here, let's say I don't know nothing about Bash or programming. Every command that I would get here, I would just look at the answer, the prompt and the answer, and then I would search on the web and then try to get a deeper understanding of how the overall picture works. Then once I have that, then it becomes more about memorizing the commands. It's the same thing with the programming because in programming is always going to be the same. The stuff that the fundamental principles are the same, always the same, but then it's going to change depending on which language. So every language is going to loop over something, for example, and change a data structure, but in each language is going to be slightly different, the syntax. So when it comes to memorizing the syntax, it's just easier to use Anki, in my opinion. And when it comes to understanding the fundamental principles, it makes more sense to use the funnel where you're studying. So it's just a supplemental thing. And I haven't been doing this for too long, so I'm not really sure, but I think it makes a lot of sense to do this. It's not that hard if you download all the other stuff that people already done. The hardest part is to create the prompts, but if you have the prompts, then it just takes like 5 minutes every day, and then you memorize stuff. Like so, I don't see why not do it. It's not that hard, and there's a lot of benefits. So command T file. Commands. Oh fuck. Next time I find out that one, I'm gonna change it. Right, standard out of command show file. Right, standard outputs. Yeah, so this is the one, but this one I don't remember. I think it's without the brackets there. So it's gonna be like this. Probably gonna change this one as well. So I'm gonna ask this one and I'm gonna change it. So every command follows the same standard. my standard out of command left. You think you create a personal project? I'm trying to create a personal project. I created a couple of personal projects before to learn a bunch of stuff. So yeah, I'm just trying to improve some stuff that I'm building, but I try not to talk about stuff. It's better to do it. Yeah, so I think that makes sense. So I'm gonna change this one to follow the same standards as the other ones. Otherwise, just confusing. I guess he probably did it like this because of the redirection, so it can be kind of confusing. But I think I'm gonna understand if I put it like this, because that way, I think it's kind of hard to find a symbol to like convey the idea that you're using a placeholder for something. But since all the other commands are like this, so I think it makes it easier to memorize if I put it like this here as well. Make a file executable is gonna be this. I think this is the one that I was getting wrong. It's ch and then modify the next file. Yeah. Oh, users. This one is the 777 thing. Not sure if I think it's this one because this on and then probably file. Oh, this modify as well. Hmm. I guess it's because you're changing the file. Tar xcf file tar gz. I think I'm not really sure yet is if it's because I haven't tried to do anything. So I don't expect to be able to because a lot of these commands I think that like in order to have this the best way possible, what I would have to do is just uh, search for stuff that I actually want to do, which was what I was thinking about doing. But I think that it would be great if people did like that. If people created this and we can create a GitHub repo where everyone can download the same templates, I think that would be amazing. So the reason why I didn't do it yet, I was thinking about doing it is because it's gonna take a lot of time. It's kind of hard to create good prompts that are not too difficult but not too easy. So like the best way that I can think about it is that, for example, you take stuff from C++ that you're gonna do all the time. So you spend a bunch of time searching what is the best way to create a vector in C++ and then loop over the vector, for example. And then you take it, you spend a bunch of time searching, then you find that out, then you create an image that has that template, and then you just put the blanks whenever on the special keywords, let's say, and then you memorize these fundamental patterns. So you don't have to research it each time. The methods on the languages as well, like how to split a string on JavaScript, Python, C++, stuff like that. So, but to create all of that's gonna take a bunch of time, so I didn't do that yet, but I was thinking about doing this. And this is the other command thing. I think this one doesn't do this, but I'm gonna do it like this. And then I'm gonna change there if it doesn't do it. So standard error should be the true, and then you pass like this. And then the other command is gonna be like this, I think. Oh, you have your pipe. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Let's block this guy. No. It seems like this deck doesn't have that many commands. It's probably gonna spend a lot less time on this one. The PowerShell had a lot more commands. So this is last one that I'm gonna do. Send command output file and print your console. Command output file. So the output should be this one. Oh no, this is the one from the T thing. So it's T, then file. Don't remember for this. This is the one that I was gonna change. So I think it's the same thing here. And then it does this. Just send both to the outputs. Then the T file again. I think it was like this. Yeah, so there's some of them on this deck as well that have two spaces. So don't like that much. I'm gonna remove. So I think based on what ChatGPT answers are, I'm gonna remove this one. And then I'm just gonna remove this other stuff here. There's another deck for Bash that I'm gonna do next. And basically based on the experience I had on the PowerShell, I think that but the PowerShell was a long deck, but I think for a long deck, usually 3,000 wraps is probably gonna be enough. Then it's probably better to separate between different decks, because when you go back to the deck, like chances are you forgot a bunch of things. So yeah, I think that you should do this iteration, like probably 10 decks, and then each one you do 3,000 reps, and then once you get to the end, you go to the beginning again, and then you do that 3 times or 3 point something times until you reach 10,000 reps on each one. So I'm gonna put like this, and I'm going to ask ChatGPT if he thinks it's fair. I'm interested in the way you learn everything. Could you suggest how to approach thinking when wanting to learn something? So one thing that I learned throughout this process is that, like, I think Elon Musk talks about this as well. You should always create a funnel. So the way you learn things is by it's just like computers. So it's exactly the same, because I think human beings are biological computers. Like all that you wire is just a connection of synapses. So you receive impulses from the environment, and then those impulses create a narrative in your mind and imagination, and that is a cycle, because that changes the way you think, which changes the way you behave, which changes the environment. And yeah, so basically everything you know is just a byproduct of the environment you are, and that gets downloaded into your body. And there's this 4-stage process that everyone talks about, which is unconscious competence, then unconscious incompetence, then conscious incompetence, then conscious competence, and unconscious competence. So first you don't know what you don't know, then which is the unconscious incompetence. Then you become conscious of what you don't know. Then after that you become conscious of what you know, because you learn stuff, obviously. And then the last stage, you're not thinking about it anymore because everything has been downloaded into your subconscious. So the most important thing in the beginning when you're learning everything is to think about what you don't know. And the best way that I found to do that is by creating it can be a graph, but more of a list of keywords. But it would be great if everyone did stuff like this, but obviously because of the way that search engines work and how everything works, that's not usually how it's going to happen because, and this is the biggest problem with search engines is because people that don't know are going to search for something and then they're going to just look for popular keywords that they know. But that's the paradox because they don't know what they don't know. So they're going to search for the superficial stuff. And then most of the videos that have the superficial stuff are not going to talk about the other stuff because that's not going to get engagement. So for example, clear example in programming is like, let's say you want to learn how to program and you don't know anything about it, but you hear from other people that JavaScript is a programming language, which is what most people do. So they go on YouTube and they search for JavaScript, and then there's going to be a tutorial about JavaScript. But the problem is that the tutorial is not going to talk about anything because if they talk about something important, people are going to tune off. So it creates this paradox. So what you have to do, keeping that in mind, is to understand that what you're trying to do in the beginning is to get all the important keywords. And the way you do that is by looking at a bunch of different JavaScript videos, for example. So you get an idea of the range of different ways to teach that thing. And then you look for what keywords can you expand on that. So you can figure out what you don't know. Then after you do that, you're going to have a bunch of keywords. And then from those keywords, your goal is going to be to create fundamental principles. So what is the stuff that never changes, that is fundamental to everything? And what is the stuff that is constantly changing, which is the superficial stuff? Because everything in the universe is going to be a funnel of information. So you have the high level, because of epistemology and philosophy, like you reach a paradox, which is the boundary of science, that you can't go beyond, because everything you know is going to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's made out of the environment. So I can only conclude things that you experience. So experience is more fundamental, and that generates a cycle. So yeah, this is a funnel, and then your goal should be to always try to figure out what are the fundamental first principles of everything, and the way you do that is by exploring keywords. And the beginning is you're very superficial and fast. Just look for a bunch of different resources. Don't pay too much attention. Just skim everything, find keywords, and try to ask yourself what is fundamental here. And there's always going to be a polarity on everything because that's the nature of perception. So I was watching a video from another guy. I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think it makes sense. And I don't understand very well his analogies, but basically he says that gravity is an electromagnetic field and everything is a torus, and everything, the part that I do agree is that he talks about space and counter space, and I think that's how it works as well. So you have potential and you have space, and that creates you have potential and have matter, and that creates space-time, which is a funnel of information. So in anything you're going to do, there's always going to be a symmetry, and then you're trying to find what are the boundaries of the symmetry, because the complexity of the geometry is going to be the gradient between the two, and people are going to be attached to whatever side is more beneficial to their body in their moment in time, because they're running through their subconscious mind, which is a feedback loop cycle, and that generates the polarity of politics. So a lot of people are going to be left, a lot of people are going to be right, and that's why free speech is important, because there's wisdom in the crowds, because the masses are like the body of the collective consciousness. It survived for a long period of time, so it's more likely to be safe. And then people that are innovative are at the boundary, because it's like a sphere. And it's a sphere because it's probably the way that gravity works. So yeah. So the roughness of the sphere contains the infinite complexity of the universe, because the boundaries are an illusion. So everything's a multifractal. And the nature of time itself is the convergence, or the change in the relative boundaries, which is the geometry of the universe. So everything you're going to learn is just going to be a geometrical structure on space and time, which is the convergence of relative polarities. And the way you build your funnel is based on analyzing the keywords and trying to understand the relative polarities of something. That's going to allow you to constantly try to get closer to the first principles, and you have to you need to have awareness that you're always in the paradox because you're always trapped by the paradigm that you have right now. So science is always going to be incorrect because of Godot's incompleteness theorem. Just like paradox is always the answer because the fundamental reality is a singularity, a paradoxical singularity, because the space-time is a hologram. So that's how I think right now, but I could be wrong, obviously. So by definition, I have to be wrong at just a certain extent, because this perspective is a paradox on itself. So like, I'm always lying, that kind of thing. So if you're always lying, then how did you just lie? That means that like is inconsistent, and the reason why is because your mind can grasp infinity, and it's just a projection of the relative polarities that make up the current nature of space and time under the lens of your symbolic abstraction, which is a consequence of the network of human beings that creates information, which is just computation, which is the nature of the collective consciousness and archetypes and stuff like that. I'm gonna look for the. I think I'm gonna look for the file names here. So probably it's a good idea to. Probably what's gonna happen here is I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna look for the constructors, I think, of each thing. Because that's, yeah, this is the function that I was talking about yesterday, is that this one's gonna change based on an event. I have to understand events, I think, to understand how this stuff is gonna work. Because here it looks like it's gonna change only when there is a file system changed events. And this is the function that I first looked. It's the only function related to export config on the editor node. And I think this one, it checks to see if you have the export presets, and the export presets as parts of this class here. And this is the class that is used to manage the state of the export presets, which is the stuff on the export GUI. And that's going to be stored on the export editor export class, which is probably, it's a member variable of the export. So the export preset has a vector that has these classes here, which is probably going to store all the presets you can have. And each platform has an ID. And I think the platforms have their own class as well. So it's probably going to initialize that editor exports. And we have to. And the thing is, yeah, it's probably editor exports contains vector of editor exports presets classes, and I forgot the. So I have to search for this. Is the name of the platform? Yeah, this one. So this tree, and also these plugins. I have plugins is kind of. It's similar to modules, but I don't know very well the difference. But it's basically the way that they allow other people to contribute in an easy way. It's just add stuff. Also, the other thing that I wanted to understand that I just remember is that the main thing I want to understand is how the. So I have to get the commands here. So how the difference in these commands create different executables. So obviously, when you use the target equals editor, it's going to create the editor version, which is going to open the project manager instead of running the engine. And if you do the template one, it's just going to run the engine right away. And I think every time you do the engine, it's going to require a package unless you export the package with the final game executable, which is the stuff that I explained yesterday. So I want to understand how embedding the information of the package on the executable of the game is going to make the engine figure out that you should be running the game and not throw the error message where it can't find a package. So I'm going to show on the executable here. Yo, man, thank you for the message. I don't know. Yeah, like you should take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because obviously everything that I'm talking about is my experience, and by definition, because like, and this is another thing that, like, the reason why, like, the whole stuff about alignment is because of that. Is because of it's just the nature of space and time. Like, just by the fact that you are a body, it means that there is separation between what you consider yourself to be, which is your body, and other people's body. And just by this mere fact alone, that means that there's always going to be conflict with you and everyone else, because what's always in the best interest of everyone is to converge the universe into a state that is beneficial to their body. So the differences in bodies are going to determine the vectors in space and time that creates the tension in society, which is the computation of the collective consciousness. So, and this is the problem that rational people have, like people with high IQ, because they get trapped into local or minima or maxima. Because from a rational standpoint, from the scientific paradigm, it makes sense to try to maximize, to put the universe into a state that is beneficial to your body. But then the problem is that if you don't see your body as being everything you're connected to, this creates a black hole. So because people that usually are high IQ don't believe in spirituality, that creates this imbalance. And that's the reason why I think that science goes the wrong path sometimes, because, and this is the whole thing about dark matter and the Big Bang, because they refuse to believe in things that are supernatural and metaphysical. And the reason why is because usually very intelligent people are not very aware of their emotions. So like usually introspection is a coping mechanism to not being able to deal with your emotions. So it creates a vicious cycle because they're extremely powerful in their intellect, so they are better at rationalizing everything, and they shouldn't trust everyone else because they know that they can see the biases in everyone else. So it creates this very difficult spots because you know everyone else is wrong, but at the same time you're very prone to creating powerful rationalizations, and that gets people that are very smart stuck into these cycles where they perceive themselves to be their body and they don't believe in supernatural things. And then that makes them create the theories of science that are most likely not good, like dark matter and Big Bang, because they don't want to believe that they are infinite beings. And the universe didn't start on the Big Bang, because if it started on the Big Bang, that means it's going to end on the heat of the universe, which means it's a paradox on itself, because if that was the case, you wouldn't be able to exist right now. Because if time depended on your memory, then that would mean that if I erase your memory, I erase the universe, which is unlikely. So if it isn't like that, then there is a future timeline where this past that is happening right now. So in the future, the past is the now. That would be impossible because time would never come back. But smart people don't want to believe that, because if you do believe in that, it's going to force you to change your entire behavior, and that takes a lot of effort and emotional strength, and it creates this imbalance. And that's the reason why I think why solving alignment is very hard, because people that are most capable to solve alignment are the ones that are least likely to be reflective of their emotions and have empathy. So it generates a black hole. So here, oh, yeah, this is weird actually, because it's opening the project manager there. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the thing that I did yesterday was to compile for the engine, and I transferred the files from this thing here to the app data. So I'm gonna open there. So what I did was just to remove the stuff that I had on the 4.3 dev, and then I had to change the name as well. And then I just compiled. So the final executable that I got after compiling this project from source, which is the 4.3 dev, which you can get from the GitHub repo. And then if you run, it's just going to complain that doesn't have a package. So as far as I understand now, the main difference, so when you compile to run the engine, you're just passing the target as a template. And what that's going to do is just, I haven't looked into the build system, but I think that's the only thing that makes sense. So when you pass the target equals editor, that means that the scones is going to use a bunch of other Python files in order to create objects of all this source code that is from the editors. And then based on the control flow that it has on the main functions, I think, and that creates the main loop, it's going to look for these flags to determine what's going to happen on the rendering cycle, which the rendering cycle, I think it's always going to traverse a sync tree, and the nodes on the sync tree are going to determine what happens. And I think that's the main difference between applications. So everything you create on Godot is always going to be the same because you're using the same engine. The main difference is the structure of the nodes that you create on the sync tree. So I think when you create for the template, there are some points that is going to on this control flow that is checking for the arguments, is going to check to see whether or not some of the classes have the state that is relevant to the resources and the project settings. And if you do have these classes or this information, then it's just going to build the scene tree based on that, and it's going to run the game. But if you don't have it, then you just throw this error message here. Oh, I just realized that what I can do is just search for the message. And that's going to allow me to understand what's going on. I'm just going to put this part here. First, I'm going to search for the exports preset thing. So I need to look into the constructors of these things, because I think that the constructor of this is going to be the thing that initializes the editor presets. But I'm pretty sure I remember, I'm going to do this actually. I'm going to open the editor there, and I'm going to remove, or I'm going to create a new project to show that at what point the export presets config file is created. And I'm pretty sure it's after you click the add button on the GUI. So so the functionality that actually creates the editor exports presets thing, I think is going to be when you click that button. But maybe it creates this before based on the platforms, and then it just updates. So I have to see. Yeah, this is the first thing that I have to figure out. Then after I figure this out, I think I'm just going to search. I think I have to search for this first before I look into the project godot thing, because obviously these things are going to be related, but this is the core of the thing that I want to understand. Is how, because the exported thing is always going to be the engine. The only difference when you put the embed package there is just going to put the other information to the same file. So I want to understand how. I guess the other thing I can do, I think this is a great idea. So I export the game, and then I just change the launch.json file to run the game instead. I didn't think about that. So if I do that and I step over and I put a breakpoint on this one, then it's going to allow me to understand what's going on. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do next. So let me write this stuff. This one, I'm not going to do anymore. Or you can create, I'm going to create a new configuration. The builds thing is going to be the same, I think. Because it is, like, the task.json is not really, maybe I don't even need the, I'm not going to put a pre-launch task. So in VS Code, I'm going to talk about this again, but because maybe some people that watch this are not going to understand how it works. But I spent a bunch of time trying to understand how this works. It's kind of confusing, but after you understand, it's very simple. So the way that you set up the C++ debugger on VS Code is you have, VS Code allows you to have these files on this .vs code folder. They're going to allow you to specify what happens when you interact with the GUI from here. So the tasks.json file is going to contain whatever you want to happen before the executable executes, or whatever command you put on the launch.json file executes. So this one is, it can be viewed as running a command from the command line here, if you're going to manually set up the thing. So first, on C++, you have to compile the project. The compilation process creates object files from the C++ files, which are called translation units. Then you have the linking process, which is going to link all these files together to figure out the dependencies on each other. And then after it does that, it creates the executable, as far as I understand now. Then obviously you run the executable to see what happens on the program. So that's pretty much the same thing that is happening on VS Code. So this part is related to compiling the project, the task.json, and you can put whatever you want here. So in this case, it's just running the shell and then running the sconce command, which is this command here, and then pressing the flags here to determine how you're going to compile the project. Then on the launch.json file, you're going to decide what kind of command runs after that. And the way you do that is you can put a specification here, which is pre-launch task. So this is going to make this task here connect with the whatever label you put here, which is going to be from here. So in this case, this command here is connected with this task, which means that it's going to run this task first, which is the same thing as running this command on the command line. And then after that, it's going to execute whatever it puts here, the program, with these arguments here. But I think if you don't put the pre-launch task, then it just runs the command directly. So I think for the stuff that I'm trying to do, that I'm thinking about doing, I'm going to create a different command here. And I'm going to execute the exported game version right away. So I don't need to compile the thing again because I just run the command, run the executable of the game, which is going to be the executable that has the package data on it. After you do the embed package exports on the editor. So I'm going to open the editor and then show what I'm talking about. Because I want to, but first I'm going to put the breakpoints there, because if you don't, then if I do F10 to step over the stuff, it's going to take a massive amount of time, because there's a bunch of stuff that gets stuck in loops and because it really is slow. Also, I'm going to create a project here, but I'll do this next time to see the exports presets config there. I don't think I need paths. Oh, and this one is going to show there on the options. Oh, and one of the biggest things that it took me a massive amount of time to understand is that the type here really matters. So the type that you put depends on what compiler you use to compile the C++ project. So if you're using Visual Studio, you're going to use this label here, which is this type. But if you're using GDB, you have to use another type. And they have on the documentation there, but I forgot. But just if you change the type, because what VS Code is going to do is going to use a debug adapter, which is a program. So it works in a similar way that Model View Controller works. So this stuff, whatever you put here, the label is going to show up here on the options. And then what this is going to do is going to launch a debug adapter, which is going to connect with the actual debugger on the back end. So if you're using GDB, for example, you have GDB on the back end, then you have the debug adapter, and then you have the GUI on the front end. And then you're just sending messages back and forth through the GUI. So every time you press a button in the GUI, it sends through the debug adapter, and then the debug adapter is going to do something with GDB in the backend. So for example, put a breakpoint or step over step, which is basically probably just automating the process of calling GDB and then putting the manual commands on the command line. And if you put the wrong type, then I think what happens is that it assumes that you're using one debugger, but the compile project is from another compiler. So it breaks the compilation. You can't load the symbols. And you need the symbols on C++ because symbols is just the labels that it uses to figure out the functions, where the functions are in memory to put the breakpoints. And so what I was talking about is here, when you put the embed package, it just creates one executable. This one, no. I just realized that I have so here. So in this case, I have just one executable, remove, and export. It creates two different files. So in this case, separates the package from the thing. I haven't tested, I think, with doing like this. So I assume that if I move to the other folder, it's gonna break because it can't find the assets for the game. So I think what is happening is just running the engine, and then the engine looks for whether or not you have this package file in the same folder. And if you do, then it's just gonna parse the file and extract all the information for the game. And that's gonna create the sync tree for the game, which is gonna load the game. But if you don't have the package, then it just shows the error message instead. So I think that's what's happening. But you have, yeah, so you have the option to export together, which is you put the embed pack there, and it's just gonna open the executable and then append, or probably append to the end, I think, the package information with the executable. So then understand how that works. So probably what I should do is just try the two different strategies. So, but I think first time I'm gonna do the embed pack thing, and then debug from VS Code to see what happens. Put the breakpoints and then debug to see what happens. Like how is it looking for the information on the executable? If the information is on the executable itself. That's the thing that's kind of confusing. Yeah, so now it works. So as long as you have the package on the same folder, I think it's gonna work. But if you do it with the other, with this option on, then it just creates one file. Yeah. I'll be right back. I forgot to put timer. So I think I'm gonna put 1 hour and then I'm gonna take a break. Or maybe actually it's kind of so I'm gonna do a half an hour and then I'm gonna take a break. Oh, so the other thing that I wanted to do is to open the yeah, I'm gonna close this one when I open the editor again. I'm gonna delete the other. So I think when you delete the project, it just that it doesn't delete the folder. It just deletes it deletes the recent dirs file, which I think is on the standard path. I should have it closed, I think. So it's on the app data path. There is, I don't remember exactly what the functionality is, but there is a functionality there that it stores the projects you have on the recent dirs file. I think it saves on this path here. Yeah, this file here. So whenever you create a new project on the project manager, it's probably going to use this file to keep track of each one. Maybe not. I know there is a file that does that, but I don't remember really well if it is. So if it isn't here, because I do remember seeing the recent. Maybe it's this projects here. Yeah, this is the file. So it keeps track of how many projects you have in this file. But I think when you delete a project, it doesn't. So probably this file here is the one being used by the project manager to load the projects there on this list here. But if you delete from here, it's just gonna delete from the file, I think, and not. It would be interesting. I'm not gonna test this now, but maybe later. It would be interesting to open the file or have the file open and then try to delete to see if it's gonna give any error message on the. The other thing that I was thinking about is that not really sure when I saw this, but maybe a couple of days ago that I saw that they put there is a site that you can see the ranking of the software, and it says that Godot is not very secure, and which is understandable because you need to grant all these permissions to Godot because they can basically open files and do anything, so it can be very dangerous. But what makes it more secure is that it's open source. But it got me thinking about the other games and stuff like that. Like if you don't wanna, because a lot of games require nowadays, especially nowadays, some anti-cheat system or something like that. So it's just something you should think about. It's kind of dangerous. So it removes from the file, but I think that's it's not gonna. It doesn't remove the folder, so I have to manually delete. But it was whatever. So the reason why I was thinking about this other stuff is that what if you wanna do something like a game with Godot, but you wanna close source? Then like, would this mean that you have to change like, maybe you have to change the whole way that it works so that you don't have the user doesn't have to grant that many permissions, and how does it work with the antivirus on Windows, stuff like that. The easiest thing to do is to just put the executable on the. I'm gonna do that. Just put on the same folder as this one, so I don't have to figure out the relative path. I'm gonna put on the binary. And I'm gonna open the other files that are related to exports preset config. And it looks like it's just this. It's just gonna be the editor node that editor exports presets or editor export file. And this one, but this one is probably not related. Start the project in release mode using the given preset and output path. The preset name should match one defined in export presets config. It's just a warning message. It's basically only these files. So the main thing that I'm trying to understand is at what point is gonna create the file for the first time. I think that, yeah, this is the stuff that I was gonna show here. So I'm gonna create another project. So presets, that's, and then have to change the path to be on the same folder. I'm gonna open the folder. In the beginning, it's just gonna put the standard files there, project.godot, and some other files in the shader files. Godot scheme library. Okay. So it just creates these files in the beginning. I think I'm gonna put this like half and a half there. The one thing that I was thinking about talking about all this other stuff is that it's a lot more clear on my mind now, the issue. Like the more times I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, and then just like talking about this stuff like every now and then, and like the more I talk about it, the more clear it becomes the fundamental issue that we have and the problem with alignment. And I think that like companies are a great example of how terminal goals can become very problematic through the non-terminal behaviors that they create. So a company's terminal goal is to maximize profit, and the non-terminal that it creates is a society that is addicted because the best consumer is a drug addict. So like a crack addict, for example, is the best consumer possible from the point of view of just maximizing profits. But this creates a paradox, which is I think the core of the issue we have today, and the challenge to solve alignment as well, because the issue is that what the company doesn't see is that if you are fully successful to the best extent that you can on maximizing that goal, what you're gonna do is just kill all the consumers eventually, because a drug addict can't sustain themselves, so you end up killing yourself, and that's the thing that I'm trying to say about the whole IQ thing. Is the exact same thing where like you're very, from one point of view, you're extremely successful because you're turning everyone into a drug addict. So you're gaining on the game of power, but from another standpoint, you're just shooting yourself in the foot because you can't see the connection of the what you are and how you are connected with the field of experience you exist in. And in order for that to happen, there needs to be a balance there. So, but the reason why it is extremely difficult is because it goes into the whole thing about the funnel of information. That in order to fully to create a better goal, more holistic goal, you have to increase the complexity to infinity for the metrics you're gonna track over what would be beneficial to maximize for a company. And the reason why is difficult is because you're forced, you're in competition and time matters as well. So it's just an equilibrium of the market economy to go over the arms race. So yeah. Yeah, so this is the tricky part is that if you increase the complexity of on the end goal, on the terminal goal, which let's say you change from maximizing, which is the whole thing about Twitter and social media that is extremely difficult to figure out, because if you have a platform like Twitter where you increase the complexity of the incentives or of the goal of the company, so instead of maximizing for engagement, you maximize for happiness, whatever it is. The way you're going to do that is by maximizing the amount of metrics you're going to measure to track whatever is the goal you're trying to achieve. And that's going to converge towards infinity because quality is irreducible. So it's always this gradient. And if you do that, then what happens is that you don't have enough power to sustain yourself because most people are not conscious enough to not be a drug addict. So just based on the market dynamics, over human nature, it doesn't sustain itself. That's why I think that the only answer is to use AI on the blockchain. Because if we're gonna have expansion that is fully autonomous and superhuman, then you need to have a smart regulation that is also superhuman. And if you don't have that, then it becomes a problem. And also, there's another problem with the current system is that the people that make the laws are also paid with money. So I have like money is global, but politics is local. So politics doesn't scale, and that means that it creates this vicious cycle. Because from one standpoint, from the company's standpoint, you don't have any incentive to give your power away because that's gonna make the other people that also want all the power to gain power over you, and then they're gonna be able to dictate what you do. So if you sacrifice the short-term goal of maximizing profit and you try to increase the complexity of the strategy so you maximize for happiness instead or something like that, then you're gonna force people to watch stuff that they don't care about, and you're gonna force them to think, and no one wants to hear this kind of stuff. So people are gonna tune out because they are not conscious enough, and there isn't a unifying force. Because that the unifying force requires faith, and faith is the unknown, and smart people also know that faith can be hacked in the same way that empathy can. So it becomes a tricky thing because if you do have faith, then you can be manipulated, and it becomes a slippery slope. So it constantly requires self-reflection. And just based on the outcomes razor, most people are not going to do that. So it's going to follow a hierarchy, which is a pyramid, which is going to be unbalanced. So the tricky thing and the challenge is to figure out the optimal for super intelligence system to be able to scale regulation exponentially, or not exponentially, but across space and time. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by encoding faith somehow. But it's going to be an endless thing because that's the essence of space and time, I think. So you're never going to get there, so you need to create a framework where it's most likely to be converging towards the best distribution, but it's very difficult. So when you click here, that's when it creates, I think, as far as I remember. Or maybe it's not here. Oh, yeah, it did create here. So before it didn't have the file, I think now it has. So, but I think if I remember doing this, and if I delete and then try again, I think it doesn't. I don't remember. It already has here. But maybe if I delete here, so it doesn't have there. Yeah. So when I click now, it creates automatically. Also, but I clicked on the other one. So This is another thing that I'm thinking about is trying to figure out how they. Yeah, I have to figure out how they create these icons here as well. So I'm looking for the tooltip there. Interesting. Oh, it did create there. Yeah. So I think either one of them creates the export presets. It probably just changes the information you have. But this one takes a little bit of time, but it does create though. So it has to be created here, but the question is whether or not you already have the class before. I think you do because based on what I was seeing yesterday, I think you already have the class initialized, and then you just change the data probably for the class. Maybe when it, no, but that wouldn't make sense. I was gonna say maybe when it creates the file, it triggers this event because of the thing there. I guess I'm gonna search for the where the. It's kind of hard because I don't know if they have a standard for the way that they emit events. They usually use a macro, and this is common on other parts as well, where depending on what kind of function they're using, they use a macro to format strings in a different way. Choose inside of the macro. It makes it kind of hard to search here. I guess I can try to. I'm gonna try to just search for the name. It's probably the best thing to do. I remember going over this and doesn't do anything as well. This one I think is the one that I looked into yesterday. So has this function, save. So obviously it's not going to be this one. So this function has to be called somewhere, I think. But this one just saves, it doesn't create. And this is, maybe it was this one that I was confused about. No, I think it was another one. Yeah, maybe it was here. Because I was thinking about how does it get the platform if it is gonna initialize here or something like that. So here it needs to have these exports presets already initialized. That's what I was thinking, I think. And then I search for the constructor, and because it doesn't have anything on the constructor, it means that this is initialized outside. So maybe the best thing to do is look for this first. I'm gonna focus on this one first. Just gonna write this here. This one is gonna be the last thing that because now I realize that probably it's better to search for the error first and then put the breakpoints and debug step over instead of trying to, because the build system is very confusing. So the only places that it has is class are here. So that should be related to this. Oh no, this is another function. I think I did. I searched for this way before I understood everything. This is probably a function that is also related to the GUI, the viewport functionality. So this one is probably related to whatever you do on this side here, I think. Yeah, menu option. And shall not. I'm gonna look into the other stuff related to this after I solve I clarify this other stuff. So this is just oh, I think I searched for this. Oh, this is another error message. Oh, this is also on the fast changed. Yeah, so all three of them are here. But this is, no, this is another thing. I'm confused the other one, sure. But I think this one is not the, yeah, it's just related to Android, so it's probably not. So there's only here and here, so it has to be here, which is on this function here. I think this is the reason why they put this name here. But they probably did this uh, not just to make stuff work, but it shouldn't be the place of the function. But the thing, so maybe on the export dialog thing, export dialog that opens the GUI. I think it has to be on the. So I don't know. I don't remember what's the name. So it has here. It's gonna be on the constructor of the class that is responsible for creating the GUI of the export presets, because it's gonna be related to that functionality. So I want you to understand at what point it's gonna create the thing for the first place. It's gonna be related to the add thing there. So it has this duplicates, and this one, yeah, this one I remember, but I searched for this stuff, but it didn't have anything. It was kind of confusing to understand. So there's this class here, the constructor of this one. Then look for other exports. So this is the button there, but it only has. So I'm probably gonna have to. So one approach is to search for the emit signal function that is gonna trigger these functions here to understand how they. And the other, which I think I'm gonna have to do, the other one, is just go over the cycle there, the main rendering cycle, just to understand more how the function that is gonna set the events when you emit that looks over the nodes, because I have to understand how they check to see. So as far as I understand, everything inherits from the object class, all the nodes that are going to be on the scene tree. So obviously the scene tree has nodes as children, and then you can create the hierarchy based on. So the nature of the tree is just cause and effect relationships on space and time, right, as far as I understand. I think it's probably not like an very accurate, but accurate example, but it's pretty similar. So the which I think yeah, on the front end, I'm pretty sure that that's how it works. So event propagates from the top down, and then they bubble up from that point. That's how it works on the front end, but I'm not really sure if it's the same thing here. So when you click uh, a button on the GUI on the front end, the way that it works is that it's going to traverse the tree up until that point. Then it's going to see that the event was triggered, and then it goes again up to see, because that is going to trigger the event on all the other nodes that are parent from the other one, unless you explicitly use a function from the front end that stops the event from propagating. And I think it's just stop event propagation or something like that, the name of the function. And if you do that, it disables, because you can imagine that this button here is part of the overall GUI. So if they both have a click event, then when you click here, you should trigger the events on the other GUI as well, if you want that. So I imagine that's pretty much very similar the way that they do this, and the way that they encode the events are on the object class, because I remember going over the signal there. So I think they probably put as a queue on each object class, and there's some control flow logic when they are traversing the tree to check to see if the object has events. You subscribe. It's probably something like that. So I have to understand when this, because as far as I remember, this one doesn't have. Yeah, this part is the one that I was confused by, because here it assumes that you already have the platforms. So it's using the editor export, but the editor export constructor doesn't create anything. You have to call the save function. That's why it's confusing. So here there isn't anything that is related to creating the platforms. So assume that something happens in between clicking the thing and the file being created, because I have to call the save function from this class first. Because probably this function is the one that creates the. Yeah, but this already assumes as well that you have editor exports. Or maybe it is initializing here, but no, it doesn't make sense because they already have. You need to have, because this is going to be a vector, so you already need to have exports for this to work. So this comes after, I think. So I think this just writes to the file, it doesn't create the file. So another option is to search for this function here. Let me remember how this works. I think that what kind of arguments the function receives, so that it is called with the argument, obviously, because there is expecting to. When you subscribe the event, you're just subscribing the function, but you're not obviously saying anything about the arguments. So you should be on, when you emit the signal, that you specify what kind of arguments the function is going to receive. So obviously sending the platform, which is going to be one of the options available. Obviously, you can have more than one Windows desktop, so I think you can have a P platform. It doesn't say anything, or maybe it does actually. So let's say, for example, you have two Windows configurations. You need to have two export. Not sure if you have two export presets file. I think you only always have one file, regardless of how many configurations you have here. It just changes the file. Yeah. So it should be. So I'm gonna open this file. It just has based on this stuff. Then it has the other one. But I think the platform. I obviously I can just task this now. So delete this. Just see what happens there. And so I think what happens is just the platform is just gonna be the name, so it is gonna be the same. So it doesn't filter things for the preset. It just so this is probably just it's probably an enum that they use based on the 5 options you have here, and it's not. It doesn't say anything. Just filters based on the name of the platform, and then from that point, it probably gets the presets from that, or all the presets. No, just it has to be just one there. So just passing based on this. But this creates the presets. So the first thing that gets is, yeah, so this is the thing that I was thinking about yesterday. So I think it creates the platforms in the beginning somehow, which is just the 5, which is always, or whatever, however many you have here. So it's going to be this, yeah, 6. So these 6 are always going to exist. So it creates the vector, it creates the platforms and appends through the vector of the platforms on the class in the beginning. And then when it triggers this event, it's just passing the enum that is for the specific platform. And then here is it actually creates the preset for the platform. So I think this probably is the part where it creates that function. It creates the exports presets for the first time if you don't have it, I think. But the platform is probably created somewhere else. So I think I'm just gonna look for the function. It doesn't have anything here. But first, let me understand this one and the other one, and then I'm gonna look for where it initializes the platforms. So here's filtering based on the platforms, based on how it looks over how many it has. I don't understand why it does that, to be honest. Because wouldn't it make more sense to loop over the ones? But I guess if you do that, it's harder to get the. Yeah. This is related to the stuff that I was talking about yesterday, not yesterday, before today on the stream, is that if I knew, because I don't know what's the best method to filter a vector on C++, but actually I think that even if I knew, in this case would have to be different because of the way that they do memory, but yeah, they're basically applying a filter here. Sure. So they create the presets and then they filter based on the platform from all the ones that they are looping over all the ones that exist, and they are getting only the ones. So in JavaScript would be just using the filter on the vector of the platforms and then filtering based on the name of the platform, or yeah, based on which platform you have right now. So but I think either way you would need a loop, so it doesn't matter that much. So checking to see if the preset's runnable. So this is probably the function. Oh no, I think this only appends to the vector. So it's creating the preset function, and then it's probably gonna store the information of that presets on the file and on the class, I think. These are the functions that I was seeing yesterday. Smart path. So the question is, what's better now, to understand this first or to understand how they initialize platforms? I think the events I'm gonna understand later probably, because it's gonna be annoying because I'm gonna have to spend a bunch of time figuring out because I'm probably gonna have to disable all the other breakpoints that I have there, and then I'm gonna have to spend some time figuring out what are the best breakpoints to understand the rendering cycle, how the events are managed. So I think it's better to just figure out based on I just want to clarify the sequence there of how initialize the platforms, updates the editor export class, and then it's pretty clear now that this is the function that I was looking at now is gonna be the one that is responsible for creating I think it creates the file if you don't have the file, so it's gonna be this function. It creates the exports preset file if you don't have it, and if you do have it, it's just gonna append the information based on this pattern here. And it works based on the platforms. So I can spend some time clarifying the nuances of how it does that. Or I can go back and try to figure out. I think I'm gonna try to figure out first how they initialize platforms, because it's gonna take a lot more time I think to figure this other stuff out, to clarify how exactly at what point they are either creating the file or writing to the file, and then how they are updating the state of the class to reflect whatever is on the file. I'm not really sure if they're using the class or the file though. Sure. I think the GUI itself is done by the class, probably. Or I think it's done by the class, but then the yeah the way that they build the package is based on the file, I think, but I'm not really sure. Oh, so but that would makes no. This is for the new one, so just storing the platform in the presets, but it has to have all the platforms before, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to call this function like from here. No, so this one uses the file probably. It's kind of confusing. So I guess you gets the default export options for each platform. So probably when you initialize the platforms, it creates the file, I think. But that wouldn't make a lot of sense because it has to call this function right away after the event. That's why it's confusing. But maybe there's another function that has a listener to the same event, and then that function gets called first. But I think there's default options for each platform, and then it gets from here and updates the initial class state with these options. Preset props. Just getting based on the OS thing. So here is the same thing that puts on the file there. That's probably not gonna be. So this part's not that difficult to understand. The main thing is just exporting. But it creates the preset here for the first time, creates the platform on the presets. Oh, this is already the exports. So it's calling from the platform already. It's just linking the platform to the preset data. But here is just for Windows. No. So it puts this on all of them. So it's just the default options probably that all of them have. But the only difference is on Windows. If you're using Windows, it puts the .exit on this variant or this property info and pushes back to the list that it passes there. And then it's going to use this one to create the initial state of the class. So this part I understand. So after it does that, it's going to initialize the values here of the other ones. So I'm going to go back to try to understand how so I have to search for it's not get, it's add, yeah, add export platform. Hmm. It's weird. So how can I guess if I search for here, it's probably not going to be this one. Oh, so I guess it's going to be one of those things that each OS is going to have its own function, and then it's going to call from that function. Export. I'm gonna look from the Windows one because it's the one that I'm most interested now. But I think is that is how it works. So each OS has its own function, and then they store on these different files. And then there's probably a loop somewhere that calls the file for each one, and then appends the. The thing is that, but it doesn't matter that it is a void function because because this is probably a global variable, so they're just calling. It's the same pattern they use on the display server. Like they create singletons, and then singleton is just gonna work as a global variable for the whole thing. And then to change the state of the class, they just call from the namespace of the class. And that gets the instance that is gonna be shared throughout everything. So it doesn't matter that it's void here. So I'm just gonna search from this. So I'm probably gonna have to search on everything. And this is weird. Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense, sure. Oh, so it's probably this one. Yeah, but this is I'm gonna search for the function, but I don't understand very well yet. But I think that whenever they have this .gen extension, it means that the file is dynamically generated by the build system. So I'm not really sure. But I think since it's a CPP file, probably not. But for the icons there, I remember that there's a header file, I think, that has the icon data information. But I think that they create that file, not maybe on the build system or maybe when you're running the thing. Like they're either a dir access or file access function that gets the icon file and then dynamically generates the other file with the data. So I'm not really sure if this is one of those situations. So it is here. So they're basically just calling here and then just gonna call the function for each thing, which it generates the editor export platform and then just updates the state of the editor export class. So it's not that hard to understand. So they initialize and then they add here, and then this one calls the other ones. So this is the macro that's gonna define the editor settings. So they're just accessing the path of the settings here. So editor settings is just accessing the path of the tree here to here, and then it assigns the values here. Sure, it's probably gonna be this property info thing. Yeah, so now it makes a lot more sense. It's not that hard to figure out. So they initialize the platforms here, then this creates the vector with the platforms. And by the time that they call that the events that is triggered, so that function that I was looking at is probably the one that creates the export presets config file. You always have the 6 platforms there, and then for the exports you can have more than one for each platform, but you filter based on the platform, and then you create the exports presets state for with default configurations. It's the same on every platform, I think. The only one that changes is the Windows because of the extension. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go from the points of the other functions to try to understand how they, at what moments they create the file. Actually, yeah, let me think about this. So I have to remember the inputs thing. So I'm gonna just do the superficial thing here, but I am curious to understand how they're gonna pass their arguments. So maybe I look for the emit signal thing, but I think that's probably makes more probably makes more sense to do this later. So after I study this other stuff, then I'm thinking which one is makes more sense to do first. Because this package thing might be annoying as well, because it might be related to a bunch of other stuff. So maybe it's better to do the input first, because I think the input is a fundamental thing that I have to understand more how it works, because it's gonna be related to everything else. And then it's probably gonna make it easier to, because there might be a bunch of things that are related to the build system, like they are related to the, because I think the package stuff is related to the project.godot settings, which is related to the project settings class, which is related to the engine. And probably on all of these classes, there are going to be parts that have functionality that are related to inputs. So I think understanding, clarifying the how the inputs work is probably, I'm not really sure if I need to. So maybe just study from, or because I already went over this, I think on one of the previous streams, but it was very confusing because they create some classes, pass this class to functions, then pass whatever the result is to another function, and then it changes the state of the object. And I think I just going from the definitions is probably not enough to understand. Yeah, I have to go. So I'm gonna go over the definitions to refresh my mind, and then after that, I'm gonna see if I can go from the main thing. So I'm gonna have to step over. I probably. So I'm gonna initialize. Then I'm gonna remove the breakpoints. Uh, So so I'm gonna refresh my mind first, then I'm gonna go over to try to understand how it traverses the sync tree, and then how exactly it's gonna, because I remember there's a message queue there somewhere, and it's probably gonna loop over that, but I didn't understand the nuances very well of how exactly it's managing the data and calling the functions for each thing. But it's probably not that hard because it's just gonna be the same. It's gonna be probably exactly the same way that the front end works, where it just is a subscription thing where when you put the connect event, it's just gonna the connect event is gonna be on the node. The node's gonna inherit from the object, and it's just gonna subscribe on the object the data class that contains information for the function. It's gonna be the function signature and the arguments that the function accepts, and then based on that, it's probably gonna check to see if the object has subscribed through the event, and then if it has, it's gonna call that, I think. But I'm gonna try to clarify the nuances of this. So first, I'm gonna have to continue to try to understand there on the other function how it creates the file. I think I already did this. No, I have to search for the. So this is the stuff that I was talking about. So it's probably better to do this after. Just search for this error message of the package, because that's probably gonna be more difficult to figure out. I'm gonna move this later. I wanna try to avoid setting the build system because it's gonna be confusing. I think pretty much all that the different syntax do, like based on just common sense, is that they're gonna, when you pass the editor flag, it's just gonna compile all the stuff related to the editor code, and then when you don't, it just compiles the engine. And it's probably the default behavior of the engine to look for the package files, the resource files, even when you have the editor, probably. The first thing that loads when you compile for the editor is the project manager. So probably from the project manager or so the functionality of the project manager is probably intrinsically connected with the engine. But you have to, if you don't specify a flag, then it doesn't load the project manager. It just looks for the resource of the current of the package file. Yeah, I think that's what makes sense. It makes more sense. So if you compile for the target with the target for the platform, it's just gonna run the engine without anything. If you compile for the editor, it runs the project manager, and then the project manager does the same functionality that the engine does, which is searches for but then it searches for all the projects that you have. If you don't do for the editor, it just searches for the package file right away, which would be like the same thing that the project manager is doing, but then bypassing that and just figuring out based on one specific project. But the default behavior is always to look for the package files, I think, on the engine. Yeah, but I want to avoid setting the build system. So I think this steps make sense now. So I'll be right back. I'm gonna make some tea. It's probably gonna take a while. So yeah, after I'm back, I'll continue to explore the thing. So probably half an hour or something like that. So be right back. I'm back. I'm gonna put some. I think I'm gonna just gonna do an hour and a half more, and then stop streaming and do the rest of this time of stream. And so I figured this out. Now I'm going to figure the other stuff out. So this part's not that interesting. The interesting part is this. I'm gonna look into this one first, but it's probably just pushing to the vector. Yeah, it just pushes through the vector. And this probably just runs an event. Because it's running this function from the editor export thing. No, this one is from the dialog. Yeah, but it's running from the editor export. It's just appending to the vector. Let me see. So these two functions are the ones that I have to understand. So first, it updates the presets. So the first one is pushing. So it creates the presets, which is the class with the default configurations, and just stores the class on the editor exports, and then it calls this function. So it's filtering based on the current. It's getting the index. So this is probably the function that is gonna. But that doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not gonna spend too much time, but I think it's gonna update the current once it creates the editor presets before. So this is gonna be the last one that I added there, and then it's filtering based on the presence, just based on the index. So it's looping over all of them and then checking to see if it is this preset is the current. But what I don't understand is why it only checks here in the end. This gets that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Just changing the current index based on the current one. All that this is gonna do is just check whether or not you call this function. Hmm. Yeah, this is kind of weird to be honest. 'Cause I assume that it's clearing all the but count. So if it's clearing all the presets, so removing all of them, then how is it counting here? So I guess this is just it's clearing, but it's related to the GUI thing. It's probably this is called on the other function that is gonna be triggered after you click on the ads thing. So I think it's just updating the state of the GUI. So it's not related to it's not clearing the presets. It is kind of weird though. It's kind of confusing to understand. So this is so just looping over the vector obviously, then getting the current one and comparing with this one. So presets gets current. So maybe I do have to spend some time understanding the presets. So this doesn't do anything to select the current, so it has to be the other one. I think it is this one. That's because it doesn't have anything related to the exports on the. This is the thing that's kind of weird. It's all related to the. Oh, it has to be. But here, I guess the current should be -1, so you shouldn't go through this probably. Because it's not. the other functions, so the first time that it runs, the other functions don't have anything related to presets. So I think that's, yeah, so it probably makes sense. But this is gonna be -1, I think. The beginning, so this doesn't run. So I guess this is just gonna select on the, but it doesn't make, because this function should be called after there is when you click the add button there, they should be showing this stuff here. So I guess the select is when you click on one of them, maybe. Because it doesn't make any sense. And this is, but it shouldn't be. I think this function is after you select, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense to create a export presets. So it must be something else that makes it open the GUI there. Oh, this is outside of the loop. I thought this was inside of the loop. So it's the weird thing. The weird thing to me is that it's looping over all of them, like regardless. Just kind of weird. It would make more sense to only add the current one to the presets. And this is why. So obviously the like explanation that would make sense is that this is used on other parts of the thing. This ultimately is going to be the function that adds, I think. And this is probably the one that writes the exports presets thing. So this is probably creating the GUI elements. That's why it loops over all of them. It's kind of weird. And the QE draw here is probably the thing that is, because it's calling the canvas item, it's probably the thing that is creating the platform options. So I guess it just creates the platform options. It's kind of weird because it doesn't have any, but maybe it's this. But it is kind of confusing. I'm struggling to separate the steps that happen. I'm not really sure. I think that it's only this function that is going to be called. So yeah, so the event would have to be on this class here, the export editor export preset. So this is definitely related to the selection, but then like the event has to be on this item list. Then the item list should be connected to an event to determine what happens when you actually click the item. So I think this is like the thing that I don't understand is why loop over all of them. So it added the export preset before, and then it's looping over all of them. So I'm imagining the first time that this runs, it's only gonna have one on here, and then it's gonna get the one. This is gonna be the preset here. The current's not gonna have anything because it's gonna be the presets is gonna be -1 here because I haven't seen. Well, maybe initializes this before. Maybe this is like the platforms is on the other class, not this one. But maybe initializes this presets before based on the platforms. So maybe it is selecting based on the it's getting the name of the export preset that was created. But it's kind of weird. Because the thing is, if you created the export presets, then shouldn't it be selected already? That's the thing that's kind of weird. So how do you know which platform it is? I guess it depends on how you receive the event. That's the thing. So this is the thing that is confused because like the add button is connected to that function, but it seems that it should. So maybe it's connected. So maybe the functionality that creates this is, but that wouldn't make sense because it seems that the functionality on the other function that I was looking at is the one that creates these selections, these options. So like if it was something else that creates this options here and then the other function that happens after you select an option, that would make more sense, I think. But then then the other part, it wouldn't make sense. I'm struggling to clarify what is the connection of the two different actions there. So initialize on the constructor. But it's just an empty. Oh, so yeah. This makes more sense. So it adds these events on the presets. But the other ones, maybe the emit signal there is this event here. Yeah, it could be that because it isn't a string there. Is a So this could be how it works. So I think this happens when you select. Yeah. So it's changing the data of this class. So the functionality on the first one is the display of these things here. And then this function here is what happens when you click on one of them. I think that's what's going on. So each one of these is the item thing there. So the presets is the item list struct or class that contains all the options here, I think. So the other function that I was looking at is gonna draw the options here. What was kind of confusing is that how does it look for the current one? I guess the current one is if you already have something selected. So when you don't have anything selected, it's just gonna bypass that because then it doesn't select anything. Yeah, that makes sense, I think. So here, this is gonna happen when you select one, and then it just changes the data to reflect the export you have. I think maybe. Or when you don't select anything. Yeah, when you don't select anything, it just resets. I think this happens when you don't select anything, so it resets the state of the class. But if you do select one, then it's gonna update based on, I think that makes more sense. It updates the states of the project export dialog class to reflect the current export you have selected. And this is the error there probably that shows when you don't have the export templates, I think. Yeah, so it's gonna check to see if the platform can export, and this function is gonna check to see the path there on the update, I think. Or maybe this one is not checking the path, it's just checking to see. So if I put Mac there, it doesn't work because you need some settings. So it's checking to see if the current settings of the export you have work. This one is probably the one that emits the thing there. True. I'm not really sure though. The weird thing is that like everything is on the same function and there's nothing that because the event's gonna be based on the input, so it just draws everything. But then like this event's probably not related to the other stuff. So this happens after it was selected. So we're just gonna change the states based on the no. So the other function is gonna be just showing the GUI elements. And because the item list has the presets have the which is all the options that show. Yeah, so when you click, it passes the index of which one and it's based on the platform. And because you're adding, so the functionality to select is going to be on a different place. So I'm confusing the two. So when select here is another thing that happens, another event. But the main one just changes for the first, inserts the export for the first time. Which is, so I think that the one that holds the ones that show up here is the editor export class. And the one that, but this, yeah, and then the export dialog gets displays based on the editor exports. Hmm. I guess this is just adding the names now. Or is it? It automatically adds. So it's checking to see if it already has. That's the reason why it runs over all of them, I think. Because if it's a platform that already exists, it's just gonna the name is just gonna be the same, but with a different thing. I think I understand now. Wow, true. So it's yeah, it's looping over all of them here. So if it didn't find anything, then it just breaks. So if it is the first one that is being added for that platform, then it breaks. So this whole stuff here is just checking to see if there is already a export template for that platform or export presets. And if it does have, it changes the name. And this is just yeah, when I was looking at the runnable there's some place here that's gonna create that function. I was thinking about this one, but now I realize it's this one. There's one of these functions here that they're building. I think it's on the updates. Yeah, the update presets. They are creating this, yeah, on here. So this runnable here that they create is just the name here that shows up. So they're checking to see if the export preset has the runnable configuration set, and if it has, if presets are runnable. So it sets the name, should be the preset name. So I don't understand why they're checking to see if it is runnable, and then if it is, they make this false. Shouldn't be the other way around. I think it doesn't matter that much. I guess it's just because that's interesting here. Yeah, so it's the other way because he's gonna use these tasks here, and if it has, then it's gonna change. It's basically based, like you just intuitively understanding just like it's whatever is not the default, then it's gonna check to see if it's not on the default, and if it isn't, then it starts. Otherwise, it just uh, uses the default one, which is probably not running. It's confusing because it's the other way around there, but whatever. And this is the thing that I'm not really sure. Like, what exactly is this thing here? So it's probably updating the events, but the thing is, I don't know, obviously, what that is. But it's probably updating the ones available here, I think. So when it meets that event, it's probably gonna call something on the export project dialog to update this thing here. But the thing is that like this shouldn't select anything, I think. It's on the editor exports. Oh, whatever. Oh, actually, this one. Oh, so it's on the. I mean, it doesn't seem that it has anything connected to this here. What's weird is that this is supposed to be related to whatever is going to be displayed here, which is kind of weird. So when you click that, you shouldn't do anything here, I think. Yeah, it doesn't do anything. So that's the thing that I don't understand. This function, it is related to showing whatever's here, I think. But maybe it just changes and it doesn't show, and then it only shows when you select. It's just changing the name of the class, not anything related to drawing. So maybe just changing the state. But it is kind of weird. I guess it creates, like when you click that and you didn't select anything, it just creates the question is which one it creates. And because, yeah, how does it know the platform? I guess the only way to clarify is to understand the inputs more. And this should be only one. Maybe this event is only triggered after you select one. So there's something else that happens when you. I think that's the only explanation. But the thing is that's on the item list there. It is kind of a get pop-up. Mm. Yeah, so it's connecting this to the pop-up already. Hmm. I think this function happens after you select one because it's connecting on the pop-up. But then the question is what happens when you click there? And this is gonna be a child of this thing. Presets. So it should be, so this thing, the L should be this stuff here. I guess I can search for this duplicate as well. Duplicates here. Also, this button just duplicates the whatever preset you have. So the presets HB is where each icon is located. I'm trying to see if I can understand where it creates the icon as well, but it doesn't look like there's anything. Maybe it's just set flat. Or it should be on the constructor probably. It is a menu button. I guess the icon is probably they're using some conversions between for strings. Like SVG thing. It's different than SVG, but it's like on HTML when you can put you can write a Unicode character that's gonna be the same as an icon. I think that's what they're doing. That is kind of it's weird because It doesn't have anything here explicitly. It's probably on the menu button. Hmm. So it creates on the constructor the pop-up, but how does it know? So let me think about this. It knows based on the events here. I guess the only way to understand is to look into the inputs because it's probably gonna be emitted whenever you click. So it's not connected to, it's not a function from one of these classes that emits the event. It's gonna be directly from the mouse click, I think. Yeah, but now it makes more sense because this is the thing that is responsible. The pop-up is the one that creates, I think. The pop-up is the one that creates the items there, and the function that I was looking at is the one that runs after you select one, I think. It's probably gonna determine whether or not shows thing based on this visibility. So I just saw there, pressed mid signal pressed, and then there's this function here. So this is the function that shows the pop-up there. I'm not gonna focus on this stuff now, but obviously I'm gonna have to. at some point understand how it works. But I think all of them are follow the same pattern. You're just gonna call display server the backend, and then the display server is gonna call the Vulkan functions to draw the stuff, the shapes. So this one is the one that happens when you select, I think. It's probably both of them, so this one and this one. Yeah, so when the index is pressed, so this one is gonna probably is gonna trigger this one, I think. That's how it works. So when you select, it's gonna create a preset, and then after it creates, it calls the other function to add on the presets. Once it calls that function, it's gonna send an event that is gonna call this one, and this one is gonna change the data on the project export dialog so that it shows here the presets and draws the other stuff here. So I think that's how it works. So this one should create the preset for the first time. So it's after it's selected, which makes sense. It has the platform here. So if it does already have the platform, it puts the number. And if it is runnable, it changes the runnable thing there so that it probably is already set when it opens. So the runnable should be based on the platform, I think. Or maybe it's copying based on. It's copying based on whatever it already has for the platform, I think. It doesn't matter that much. So this is the one that emits the event probably. I'm still not sure whether or not this is gonna be. So this is gonna be -1 here. Because it does initialize there, but it doesn't have anything. So I think the other functions don't initialize it, so I think this is gonna be -1 the first. And it doesn't make sense. Like it has to be has to be different than -1, so it calls this stuff here. Yeah, so the other function should at some point change the value of this. Yeah, but here it doesn't seem that has anything. It's also on a different class. So in my mind, this should change. It should change the value of presets on the editor export class. Maybe here. But oh, so here maybe because I'm thinking that this is, but it is just It's not gonna change the current, the value of the current. That's the thing that is weird. When you select one, it should call this function. So, but the thing that is not making sense is that like this should be -1 because the other function, unless it's somewhere else, that it changes the value of this. Because this should be true, so it should be something else. And then this is gonna make the, because here is gonna loop over all of them, I think. And then it's gonna select the current one based on the, actually, I don't know. I think the selection here is not this one. It's like here. So it's checking to see, but that would be weird because then it wouldn't be adding. So I think when you click on this on the first time, this should be -1 because it doesn't have anything here. So it's just gonna load the defaults. Yeah, that's what's happening, I think. So this function probably is the one that adds the, or changes the presets. Yeah, it's probably this event here. Not sure though. So what I was trying to see is the exports config, but this is also weird here because I don't know. Like this is kind of the problem because it has to depend on this thing here, which is gonna depend on that editor exports presets. This is just removing things from the file, so it doesn't have anything to do. So maybe it's on the other function, the last function that it calls there. Could be. I have to remember what is the function that creates the exports presets config file, because it could be on the other in the constructor of this thing here. So I have to look for that function and then try to see if it's called somewhere here. I don't think it's here. It doesn't have anything. So I'm gonna look for the file again, export presets. So it's on this config here. Oh, this should only save the thing. Yeah, the thing is, it could be some other events that triggers some other thing that calls this function. So whenever there's a change on the exports, it's just gonna call this function again, and then it's gonna change the file. So it could be this. But I think that is the only thing that has this function. Oh no, I didn't search for. So I'm gonna look into the passing the path. Yeah, so this is the function that creates the file. Now it has to be this one. Yeah, this is the function that creates the exports config. So let me search for this. And this. So it has to be calling from the name. Oh, it's calling based on this timeout. So I guess it creates before, but that's kind of weird. Because if I delete there, it doesn't have anything on the project. And then when I add, it's gonna create. That's the weird thing. Because if it was based on the timeout there, then I think it would create the whatever seconds it has there after the class is constructed. And this is initialized on the editor node, I think. Yeah, it doesn't have anything here. So if it is calling from the other class, it has to be calling with the global thing. But then you wouldn't, like, it doesn't show up here. The only place is that callback, so. So it has to be the signal, I think. It's something related to the signal with the event. So after it adds there, I think it is on the events after it adds the thing. Yeah, it should be. I guess the easiest thing to do is just to comment it out and see what happens. So look for the events on the function, comments all the events on one by one, and then see which one is responsible. But I think what's happening is just calling that function, this function here. When you select one of the presets, the pop-up is the one that creates the, which is gonna be probably based on the mouse events. And that function calls the display server to create the GUI, which is this stuff that shows here. The platforms are created after it creates the editor exports, the other function. And then once you select one of them, then it's going to call this function. And then in one of these events that this function sets off is going to, for some reason, do the timeout on the other one. Uh, I can't really know because it is based on it is a variable there and not a string. So, but I'm pretty sure that this is what's happening. So it has to be one of these. I think after this one probably, like this event here probably. And once this, so this is probably running the. I guess I can look for this file, this variable here. But I think I've looked into this, and the only place that it exists on the constructor. So it shouldn't be this event. Because it has to be this timeout event. I guess I didn't search for editor. No. Oh, but I did search for this and it doesn't have anything. So like it could be calling from this one, that function, or the save function. So the only place that it shows up is this one. So it has to be coming from these events. So at some point it has to trigger this. But I think it's not on the, so it shouldn't be on this one. So it has to be on either one of the other functions. Maybe on this. And this is just related to drawing this stuff, the information. Could be this. I, this probably makes a lot more sense to search based on the event itself. But actually, that doesn't make sense because it isn't like a string there. But it should make the variable equal to the string at some point. If it is, that's what's happening. I'm pretty sure that it is an event. There is nothing here, so it should be on one of the events before. I'm gonna search for. So probably the last thing that I'm gonna do is search for that, and then I'm gonna stop streaming because I'm already tired almost the time. So it has to be. At least I know now what's the function that creates the thing. That should be this. And the only confusing parts, and I think I understand now like how it works there. So I'm probably not gonna invest too much time on this because the other stuff, figuring out the other stuff is more important. And this is kind of weird though. Yeah, just connecting through the events. Also, this is the only place, so it must be here. But that's really weird. It's like what's weird is just based on the description, it doesn't make sense that it would be one of those functions that sends these events. It's really weird. Oh, the other thing I can do is just comment stuff out. That's another option. So probably maybe there's a variable, and then after, because the thing that is confusing is that like this should only run after the add button was clicked there. So it would make more sense if it runs after you initialize the editor. So it waits for 0.8 time, and then it runs the function. Well, what it doesn't make sense is that it only creates the file after. So maybe there's a flag variable somewhere that sets the time off based on the events there. I think I'm gonna stop here. I'm already tired, so I'm gonna continue to try to figure this out for today. And then if I can't figure out, I'm just gonna continue on the other stuff because I'm already happy with the understanding I have now, and there's other stuff that is more important to know, to focus. So I'm gonna follow these steps here next. So next thing that I wanna do is clarify how the inputs work on the sync tree loop. I'm gonna probably step over with the debugger as well. The next one is step over with the debugger to understand how the engine, the final executable that creates the game, uses the package. So probably what I'm gonna do is just step over with the game, and then step over directly with the engine, only the engine without the package file. But before I do that, I'm gonna put the breakpoints on the error message there. But I'm gonna probably step over with the game first, and then if I can't understand, I'm gonna step over with the only the engine version to see at what point it's gonna show the warning message to understand how the engine uses the package data. And I'm probably gonna have to go back, but I think I'm gonna go back with to the understanding how the package data is compressed. Once I know how to build the assets and the game directly from the code. So once I understand more the viewport, because then I can start changing the code, then I think I'm probably gonna do that by exploring the icons there. So the functionality related to these icons here by searching the tooltip information. So I wanna figure out how to do this programmatically. And then, because it's gonna be annoying to figure out the package file, how the data is formatted. So once I understand how to create stuff programmatically, then I have to understand how the clarify how the package manager is created, and then how the engine uses that data. Because once I understand those, like those are the main things that I have to understand. And once I understand that, then it's not necessary to use the editor to create. So that's the goal. So I'm probably gonna continue to do this either tomorrow or the day after, and continue to follow these steps here. So see you next time.